All right, we're back here on the Chase Thomas podcast, taping this late on Tuesday with someone who is quite familiar with a football program that I unfortunately have to do battle with this fall once again after what happened in Neyland last year. It's Jim Hammett. Jim, good afternoon, evening. How are you, sir?
Doing well, Chase. I guess we're kind of getting closer to football season each passing week here.
We are. Tennessee's baseball season came to a close on Sunday, so it's full steam ahead on football season here. That's where all of our eyes have turned a little bit. It is it, the Pitt Panthers. I just think are so interesting going into this year because the ACC title game featured two teams that before the year nobody had in the ACC championship. Nobody had Wake Forest running the gauntlet. Nobody had Pitt running the gauntlet, and hey, that's what happened. Are you still just kind of amazed at what Pitt was able to accomplish with Kenny Pickett and company last year?
I don't know so much amazed. I think a little surprised. Obviously, I think a lot of people kind of close to the Pitt program knew they had an experienced team, an experienced
Mm.
quarterback, and so there were some kind of expectations within the program and people that follow the program. I don't know if 11 wins was what everyone was thinking, but definitely it was a little bit of a surprise. But at the same time, it was kind of like almost an expected breakout year at the same time.
Hmm. Well, the offseason has unfortunately been kind of defined a little bit by the Jordan Addison situation. So now that he is officially out the door and he is at USC, where are you at with him? Where are you at with just where Pitt's wide receiver room will be without him going into next year?
Yeah, that's obviously a big loss. Jordan Addison had 100 catches, Blitnikoff Award winner, first team All American. I mean, he was an outstanding player last year, and the expectation this year was that he could be an outside Heisman candidate. He was that kind of player, so it definitely hurts the room. But the thing with Pitt is, they lost a big player to the transfer portal, but they've also added a few big ones as well. Keontae Mumfield from Akron was a freshman All-American. He's expected to come in and play right away. Actually, a former Tennessee Volunteer, Bub Means.
Hmm.
He was at Louisiana Tech, started at Tennessee, Louisiana Tech. Now he's at Pitt. He's also expected to come in. And they also have Jared Wayne back, who had 47 catches. So I think the expectation is, yeah, Addison's gone, but they still have a few playmakers up their sleeve as well.
What do you think happened with Addison? Do you think it was a tampering situation? Do you think he wanted to stay and he didn't want to enter the portal? Like, from the outside looking in, like what do you think actually happened there?
I think there was definitely some, NIL influence to his decision. I think losing Kenny Pickett and his wide receiver coach, Brendan Marion, and Mark Whipple, the offensive coordinator. I mean, I think that's what, was kind of said on the outside. But I do think a lot of it was kind of a money situation. And that's kind of what we're in college football these days. So, it was kind of quiet during spring ball. I mean, they really didn't use him a lot in spring ball for obvious reasons. You wanted to keep him healthy. So, you didn't hear a whole lot about him, but he's kind of a quiet guy in general. He kind of
Hmm.
keeps to himself, so that wasn't unexpected. So it was, I think 2 or 3 days before the portal deadline or whatever, it started to bubble up, and obviously that caused such a stir across college football. But that's exactly what happened. I think there was some NIL influence. I think he knew Caleb Williams. They're both from the Washington D.C. area,
Hmm.
so there's definitely some things going on there. But at the end of the day, I don't really begrudge him. It sounds like he has a lucrative deal. He'll make some money this year playing college football, and I think that's what the NCAA kind of set up, and for better or worse.
Where is Pitt with their NIL? I know different programs are getting into different stuff, and I've talked to a lot of different beat writers, a lot of different people across the country, and where they're at with that. And Iowa, it's going to be a process; like it's going to be pretty slow. And then you go to Tennessee, we're full speed ahead in a lot of ways. But where is Pitt at? Because you mentioned NIL being a factor, and we don't, like you said, he has a prior relationship with Caleb, and obviously a great system, and he'll probably do great at USC, but he also did great this past year at Pitt. Where is Pitt in terms of NIL? What is their collective situation like? Have they hit the ground running? Where are they at in that front?
Yeah, I think that's still kind of getting off the ground. I mean, last year there was it came out right before the season. They had a donor that donated $20 million to the program, not to
Hmm.
NIL, but they do have, guys like that with money like up their sleeves. And there obviously last year, Kenny Pickett, he did pretty well, but that was like in the beginning stages of it. He drove a nice car around. He ate dinner, and he had a couple smaller deals. It went from 0 to 60, I think, from that first season to this off season. So it'll be interesting to see, what happens this year. I mean, they don't have that. They have some really good players. I don't know if they have high profile guys that would command a ton of money on the team this year. So it's just going to be a year by year. And I think this whole thing is still evolving, and nobody really knows where it's going to end.
How nervous are you about Mark Whipple moving on to Nebraska going into this year?
I don't think that's really a big issue.
Hmm.
It actually kind of came up. He wasn't coming back next year. That's just kind of the story. I don't think Whipple and Narduzzi really saw eye to eye on a lot of
Huh.
things. There was it took a couple years. He was at Pitt for 3 seasons. The first 2 years were kind of shaky. Obviously, everything clicked last year. So I think it was kind of going to be a mutual parting of ways either way. I think the timing of it was a little off, but I think they're pretty comfortable hiring Frank Cignetti Jr. He's actually from the area. He did pretty good work with Boston College, Phil Dracovic. He's been around the NFL and college football for a long time, even worked at Pitt before. So I think it was kind of a seamless transition in that regard.
What was the issue? Was it just offensive philosophy? Was it like he wanted to run tempo, 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 and Nartuzzi didn't want to play that way? Like, what was the issue over 3 years, do you think, between them?
I think probably some tempo issues and stuff when you have a defensive coach and you
Yeah.
have a coach that generally, wants you to run the ball a little
Hmm.
bit. And Pitt was, one of the highest passing teams last year.
Yep.
Obviously, you trade off because you were so successful, but I think there was just some seeing eye to eye type things and stuff like that.
Do you think Cignetti is there for the long haul? Do you like it sounds like with his connection there and Pat being there for as long as he has, it sounds like this might be more of a stable, more long-term coaching group now, right?
Yeah, I kind of think so too. And I think this is his fourth or fifth offensive coordinator already. They seemed, it went from Jim Chaney to Matt Canada to Sean Watson to Mark Whipple, now this Frank Cignetti. So it's kind of been a
A lot of
revolving.
talent.
Yeah, there's been some good coaches. I think when Matt Canada was here, they had a really good offense. Obviously, they had a really good offense last year.
Well, he's still
So
there. He just moved up
it,
one rank.
yeah, he's just across the building. But
Yeah.
pretty much, it's. I think Cignetti will be around for a while. He is local. He has a lot of ties to the area, and I think he was kind of, when that opportunity came, at his introductory press conference, he said he was eager to be back home.
Interesting. Have you but to this point, has Pat Narduzzi met your expectations when he was first hired? Has he come in a little bit too low? Do you think there's this past season is like him breaking out and getting over the hump and that smooth sailing going forward? What where are you at with Pat and all that?
I think like one of the points you mentioned, it was kind of getting over the hump because
Mm-hmm.
I think he did a lot of things right during his time here or at Pitt. I think that the recruiting got better. I think they were sending more guys to the NFL. Past alumni were kind of supporting the program. It was just like they were missing that one big season, and it finally happened. And with all the success with Kenny Pickett as well, it really turned the program around. And I mean, the fan base is as high as it's been in a long time, probably at least in a decade. So I think he needed that big breakout season and he got it. And I think that momentum's kind of carrying over in the next year as well.
So you think he's okay for the long haul? Do they not? Are they comfortable with him being the Pitt head coach for the foreseeable future? Because he's going to stumble into like being one of the longest tenured head coaches in the Power Five pretty soon. It feels like.
Yeah, it's kind of funny with the ACC Coastal. That's always kind of been a division of chaos, and I think he is the longest standing coach there. But I think he is in for the long haul. He did sign an extension this offseason after the big year, so he's from Youngstown, Ohio, which is just over the border. So I mean, he's local. I don't really think he has his eyes set on any other job. I think he had opportunities to go back to Michigan State, and he didn't. So I think he's pretty comfortable in Pittsburgh.
Interesting. Well, Pickett's out the door, but you get another talented kid in the building in Kedon Slovis. How has he looked thus far this spring, this summer? Should the expectations be the same as what it was for Pickett this past year and just with his pedigree? Because he is new to the program, but he's not new to success in college football. And he was when healthy, one of the best quarterbacks in college football less than 2 years ago. What are your expectations for Kedon, and what have you seen thus far to point you in a positive or maybe a more questionable direction about him?
I do want to point out, I think Kedon Slovis will be the starter, but there actually hasn't been a starter named yet.
Mm,
Kenny Pickett's longtime backup, Nick Patty, he's been with the program since 2018. He's still kind of in the running, and
hmm.
he started the bowl game last year and got
Yeah.
hurt very early on, but he's still around and he has the respect of the teammates. So like he's kind of there are two guys vying for the job, but I do think Slovis will ultimately win it, but I think everyone's pretty on board with him. I mean, because it's an experienced team, even with losing Addison and Pickett. All five offensive linemen are back. One of the tight ends last year, Gavin Bartholomew's back. I mentioned a few of the receivers are back. All three running backs are back. I mean, so it's kind of he's walking into a good situation. Either quarterback would be, but I mean, Slovis really did display a lot of arm talent his freshman year at USC. I think he was a freshman All-American, freshman of the year in the Pac-12s. I ran into some injuries a little bit last year, coaching change at USC, and he ended up at Pitt. But I think the fit there is good. He's kind of a pro style quarterback. Frank Cignetti has experience working with that, so I think the expectation is that Slovis can have a lot of success with Pitt this year.
Are your expectations the same as what they were last year? Do you think this is a team with what they brought back and their transfers and Slovis? Do you think this is a program that should be back in the ACC title game next year, or do you think they take a slight step back?
I think right now, I mean, you look at the preseason rankings and the magazines, and Pitt's kind of like hanging out in the top 20, maybe top 25, and I think that's about right for this team. There are definitely some question marks. Losing one of the best quarterbacks in program history will obviously create those, but like I said, there's a lot of starters back on offense. I think there's 8 starters back on defense, so there's a lot of hope around the Pitt program that this can keep rolling, and they'll be in the ACC title game again this year. I think Miami will be a little bit better this year, so the challenge in the other division might be a little more difficult, but I think there's a lot of confidence around Pitt football right now.
Is it a positive or a negative for Pitt football to get rid of divisions and to go to a full just nine game conference schedule?
I think it's I don't see a big difference. I mean, they'll still see Clemson a little bit more often, but really outside of Clemson, I don't think the Atlantic's a better division top to bottom than what the Coastal is.
Yeah.
So I think it creates a little more diversity in your schedule. The way Pitt recruits, they like to recruit in Florida and Georgia, so that gives them opportunities to head to those states maybe a little more often. So I don't really see a big difference for I think there's probably some teams in the Atlantic that are begging not to play Clemson every year, but I don't think the rest of the conference is all too concerned about it.
I'm just happy that the Backyard Brawl is back. Is that something that Pitt fans have wanted, and that's something that they have voiced to the administration of like, why just there are certain rivalries where it's like, why aren't we doing this? I mean, here in Tennessee, like I see so much Virginia Tech stuff, and Bristol was such a big success that's like, why not? Why don't we do a home and home? Like Tennessee fans would love to go to Blacksburg, and Blacksburg fans would love to come here, and it's like that's an obvious one. Just do that every year, or play Memphis more often. Whatever it is, just do the rivalry stuff, the home and home. Like that's the big winner. And the Backyard Brawl is one of the best and one of the oldest, and it was this thing that we all grew up watching and loving, and now it's back, and it's weird because we got 2 USC former USC quarterbacks potentially under center in this one. But how big is it to have that back, and do you see it being ever getting to a point where it's back on the calendar every year?
I think they're getting closer to that point of maybe playing almost every year. They added some more games to the series. I think down the line, how college schedules work. It's maybe 10, but they're playing again. But it's unique because Pitt's 2 biggest rivals weren't on the schedule the past couple of years because they don't play Penn State either. And I think
why is that?
There's a lot that goes into that, but I think a part of it, that rivalry kind of died around 2000 Joe Paterno kind of had some hand in that, and they didn't want to play Pitt every year. But it came back for about 4 years. Or
Yeah.
2000, and the games were good, well attended. The whole state was really into it. So it's just like one of those weird things that there's not really a right answer why they don't play, but that's another one. I don't know if that one will get back on the schedule regularly, maybe here and there, but I think West Virginia is interested in playing Pitt, and I think Pitt's interested in playing West Virginia, especially with West Virginia being in the Big 12. They don't really have rivalries. And this year it's the Thursday night ESPN college kickoff of the year, first game of the year kind of thing. So there's a lot of hype around the game. I think a lot of people are excited to see it back. So I think it'll be seen more regularly, and there's a chance that that'll be played more than Pitt and Penn State.
Interesting. I didn't even realize the Penn State thing. Is that what's the biggest rivalry? Do Pitt fans see West Virginia as their biggest rival, or is it an ACC team just because they've been there for so long? Who is the number one hated? Like, you're on the message boards, you're over at Panther-Laire, you're looking at it. Who do they hate the most?
Penn State.
Okay.
Not even a question.
Interesting. And it's Penn State's fault that this is not happening every year.
If you talk to a Pitt fan, that's exactly what they would say.
What would a Penn State fan say? What do you think their AD would say right now? Like, if I asked him, I was like, hey, why aren't you scheduling Pitt? What are we doing?
Their public stance would be is we play 9 conference games and we want to have more diversity to the schedule.
What do you think the actual true serum answer to that is?
I think there was a time and place where Pitt and Penn State wanted to do a 2-for-1 on the schedule, and Pitt would not sign up for it.
So like a 2-for-1 is in like they get 2 home games and Pitt only gets 1, or interesting?
I think that's where it all kind of got rooted back in the early 2000s.
See, this is why we need, like, my thing is on all of this stuff with realignment, with everything else, with scheduling. It's like we need to have like season ticket holders in the room with all of these decision makers. Like, just have like 3. Just have 3 lifelong fans, season ticket holders, tailgaters, whoever. So when they're coming with an idea, you turn to them and you go, does this sound weird? Is this what an actual football fan who pours a lot of money in this university, is that what y'all want? No? Okay, we'll start over. Or like, what do y'all think about this? Because ultimately you want those people happy, and college football attendance is in a decline. It declines every year. And part of that is prices, obviously, and TV and things like that. But the other part is just these games. Like, if you look at Georgia's home schedule this fall, it sucks. Georgia's home schedule is a joke. Their biggest game, non-conference game, is at a neutral site in Atlanta against Oregon to kick things off. And that's it. Like, you go through, and I don't know. Like, that's an easy one. Like, everyone in the state wants to see it. Pitt, Penn State. That'd be a great thing. It'd make a bunch of money. Just do that thing. Like, get to a Penn State fan and a Pitt fan in the room and be like, should we do this? Should we bring this back? They're going to be like, yeah, why would you even ask that question? Why is this even not happening? Like, how dare you for not even putting this back on the calendar anyway? I just don't understand stuff like that. Just make it happen.
Yeah, it could happen. And, there's no reason the 2 biggest schools in the state shouldn't play every year in every sport. So that's kind of just one of those things. And, I think conference realignment plays a part in it, with one being in the ACC, one being in the Big Ten, but they're 2 hours apart. I mean, it's, I kind of I don't live in Pittsburgh. I kind of live in between the 2 places. And, some people are Penn State fans, some people are Pitt fans. I mean, that's just how it is. And, everyone's fine with it. They should probably just play.
I would agree. What is the biggest position of strength for Pitt coming into this year?
Probably the defensive line. Pitt leads the country in sacks over the past 3 seasons collectively. That's kind of been a strength. Defensive line coach Charlie Partridge is one of the best in the whole country. So they have Kalijah Cansey back. He was a 3rd-team All-American last year. Haba Baldonado, a first-team All-ACC kind of guy. So they have 6 or 7 defensive linemen they feel pretty comfortable playing, and that's definitely a team strength. The way Pitt plays defense is they'll give up big plays in the passing game. You can beat them deep, but if the pass rush gets to you, that's when it's working. And they, like I said, they have led the country in sacks the past 3 years.
What is the most important stretch of games this year for Pitt?
That's a good. I mean, you could argue the first 2.
That
could really dictate the whole season, because you open with West Virginia and Tennessee at home, And, like I said, I think Pitt might be preseason ranked. It probably will be. So, you start out 2-0, you climb really fast, really quickly with those kind of wins. But if you lose one of those games or both of those games, and, the win kind of comes out of the sail of the season. So I think, honestly, the first 2 games of the year are huge. But, at the end of the season, the way that everyone's talking, how the Coastal's going to work. I mean, the last game of the year is against Miami, down in Miami, and that could be a really, really, really big game.
When you look at the Pitt Tennessee game last year and you think about how good this year, obviously Joe Milton, barring injury, will not be under center this time. It will be Hendon Hooker. What is the biggest thing you're looking for? Because you're going to see 2 high-powered offenses back to back. Because West Virginia, they hire Graham Harrell, so they're doing the run and gun. They're going to be pass, and Tennessee is going to be pass, tempo. Do you think this defense is ready for JT and Hendon back to back? Are you kind of nervous? But like you said, defensive line just being a position of strength here. Did you see something with the tempo last year that kind of makes you question how this will go in part 2 with Tennessee, or do you think this is a good situation to be in, especially being at home this time?
Yeah, I think the biggest concern with this game is, can they score enough to, outlast Tennessee? Like last year, you had Kenny Pickett. Yep. They put up 40 points. I mean, that was a nice thing to have. So at this point, you don't really know what the offense is going to look like. I mean, you have a good idea. You think it can be pretty good. Kedon Slovis, if he adjusts right away, then maybe the offense clicks. So I think, like I said, the defense is what it is. It's kind of weird. Pitt's defense, like Narduzzi's defensive guy, they give up points. They give up big plays, but like they come up with splash plays. That's kind of how they kind of live. Like they live dangerously, I guess is how you would call it. But so it's Tennessee's going to score points on them. So I think really it comes down to, can Pitt outscore them?
Interesting. As of right now, it is June 14th, 2022. Jim, what do you think will be the final record this season for Pittsburgh right now? What are you feeling?
They went 10-2 last year, and I think that's pretty attainable again this year. I think they can go 10-2. I don't know if that wins them the Coastal. It might, but I think 10-2 is probably a fair bet right now.
When was the last time Pitt went back-to-back double-digit win seasons? Has Pat done that? He hasn't, right?
No, it's probably 80, 81.
Oh, wow. Is this a Tony Dorsett year?
That's like Dan Marino-ish area.
Okay. I have a Tony Dorsett framed photo signed by Tony Dorsett when Pitt played Georgia Tech. My dad got that when he was like a Georgia Tech ticket guy, something, when he was in high school. I forgot it was some kind of volunteer thing when he was in high school, I think. And he got Tony Dorsett's jersey and just got it framed and all that kind of stuff. I think it's signed, but yeah, pretty cool thing. So there you go. Jim, how do the good folks keep up with your work and the good team over there at Panther-Laire this week?
Yeah, they can follow me on Twitter at Jim Hammett. That's with 2 M's and 2 T's. And our website is panther-laire.com, pittsburgh.rivals.com. Most comprehensive sports of Pitt sports news, recruiting on the internet.
There you go. Cleese the dog has had enough. And I will, amazing. I've done like 1,000 episodes and this dog has never barked on an episode. So Jim, thank you so much for the time. I greatly appreciate it. And we'll have to check back in again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jason.